was a shot heard around the world. That's what started the revolution. Hi, I'm Adriana Ahart, and I'm here to talk to you about how books can be used to teach 3 facets of the American Revolution. So why the American Revolution? The Ohio Department of Education suggests that for the 8th grade standards, we teach the Revolution. And think about it. Had the American Revolution not happened, the world would be a lot different than it is today. We'd still be speaking England English, so we'd all have British accents. So what can these books be used to teach? Well, it can be used to teach how young men were provided service in the war. In an article, Colonial Teenagers by Ellen Pearson and Young People at the War, Journal of the American Revolution by Thomas Bowen, you find out boys can easily sneak into the army at that time because they didn't check records. You also could find out that if they couldn't sneak in, they could be a drummer or a trumpeter. Next, you can learn about what women did for the revolution. The article by Fleming, it talks about how women would provide services to the war, such as being nurses, or doing laundry, or cooking, so they could get paid and follow their husbands in the war. An article by Coletta talks about specific women's contributions to the war. It talks about how women like Catherine Schuyler would burn their crops to the ground to make sure that the British troops couldn't use them. And finally, you can use books to teach how the conditions of the war were for soldiers. And that's that picture in the corner of Valley Forge. UShistory.org. In the article, War Experience Soldiers, Officers, and Civilians, U.S. History Online, textbooks about how untrained soldiers, talk about how untrained soldiers were. So it talks about how soldiers were untrained and how Valley Forge's conditions were. Valley Forge was cold, very cold, and they didn't have the proper necessities to deal with it. They got frostbite on their toes, and people would try to desert, but Washington said, you desert, you're going to get shot. So what are the 3 books I used? I used Guns for General Washington by Seymour Wright, Johnny Tremaine by Esther Forbes, and The Secret Soldier, the story of Deborah Sampson by Anne McGovern. Johnny Tremaine is about a young man in the time of the Revolution who was a silversmith. However, he injures himself and cripples his hand. So his only choice is to go and fight in the Revolutionary War, and as he does this, he does help the Founding Fathers. This is a historical fiction novel, and my other 2 are based on true stories. Deborah Sampson, the story of Deborah Sampson is about Deborah Sampson. She was an orphan in the time of the Revolution. She herself, there was not a lot of options for women back then. So she snuck away and took the guise of a soldier. And because she took this guise of a soldier, I think it will remind students of Mulan, so they'll want to read it. Finally, Guns for General Washington is about Will Knox, another true story. He brought guns to Washington in the dead of winter to help him win a battle. So, it's his classroom activities. So, for Johnny Tremaine, I have 3 activities. I'm going to show the movie, Johnny Tremaine, It was a Disney movie made in 1957. I really think classroom kids will still enjoy it. And then it will provide a visual for kids who have a little bit of a harder time reading. And then for the second one, I'm going to have them do a fact check. Because it is a historical fiction novel, I want them to go on a fact hunt and see if they can find what's true and what's false in the novel. I want them to find 5 true facts and 5 false facts. And I think that's a good way for them to look and find primary and secondary sources, as well as a good way to start teaching what is good sources and what is bad sources. Like Wikipedia is bad sources. For Deborah Sampson, and I mean for the last book of for the last thing for Johnny Tremaine, I want them to write a letter to Johnny, providing evidence from the text to support their choices in their advice to Johnny, what he should do next, or what they would do if they were in his position. For Deborah Sampson, I also have 3 activities. For the first activity, I want them to take a scene from the book and reenact it. They will work in groups of 4 or 5 to come together and write a skit and perform it in the class. This will provide teamworking skills that they need. And then for the second activity, I will show a video called Rock Stars of the Revolution, Women Founders. This will give them some ideas of women founders of the revolution for the final project that I want them to think about. So, the final project, I will give them the article by Coletta I have mentioned before, so they have an idea of who they would want to write a PowerPoint presentation over and give a presentation on. This will help them with presentation skills. So, they will pick one of the women and give a 4-minute presentation on their woman of choice, given information about their help in the revolution and what they did after. Finally, for my last book, Guns for General Rossington, I have 3 more activities. So the first activity for this is I'm going to show this video here. Uh-oh, we're not getting sound.
You have to click the sound button.
How do I?
It's on the keyboard. On the top.
We've had issues with sound today, so.
It's not.
Is it something on
Check
the
the
wall?
TV. No, you can unplug and they just listen through the computer. We could do that, Anna.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, it didn't work for me either.
Like, it's playing the video, but yeah, it sounds weird.
Just take out the little cord that's.
I did.